I've been emotionally torn about this whole situation regarding the Black Lives Matters movement, George Floyd's passing, and the many protests that are fighting for change to these unjust systems. My opinion has changed at least 20 times, and I don't think I'm able to coherently convey a politically correct message, as there are too many parts to these social issues that I feel unqualified to address, given my lack of experience and my perspective as a young Asian American. What I'd like to address are based on my observations of the current situation. However, my age and experience may also skew my overall views, so take everything I say with a grain of salt. I can easily say that I'm scared of putting this out, because I know some of my viewpoints may be a bit controversial. But I believe that another perspective may help further the conversation that we all so desperately need to be a part of. The first topic I'd like to address is the idea of right and wrong. I'd heard something interesting from Trevor Noah in his response to the ongoing situation regarding the definition of society and the have-nots. Essentially, he views society as a contract within the people who agree on common rules, ideals, and practices. If that contract is broken time and time again, why should the people uphold those common rules? Like Trevor Noah, I've also seen many comments about how these riots and lootings are wrong and how it's the wrong way to go about protesting. What was significant about Trevor's speech to me was that there isn't a right or a wrong. What I realized was that right and wrong are governed by the perspective of the person when the societal contract is broken. Imagine if you were a Black person who had to witness police brutality on a daily basis, who had been unfairly rigged against in the justice system, who had to live in constant fear of the possibility of getting killed. How would you respond? These fears and anger eventually will boil over in the form of riots. Echoing the message of Martin Luther King, riots are the voices of the unheard. After time and time of getting ignored, acts of violence such as looting and setting areas ablaze becomes the only way to release these pent-up emotions and to have a voice. To them, their actions are justified. To the silenced, their actions are righteous. To those who lack in rights, lack in voice, lack in justice, what can they turn to in order to be heard? These people are the have-nots. And following what Trevor Noah said, when you are a have-not, you view the world very differently than those who have. Although I do not condone violence, nor am I supportive of these actions, I can listen and understand their frustrations and the reasonings behind their motives from the perspective of someone who has. The second topic I'd like to address is the overall generalization across both groups. For one, there is a heavy focus on the violence of these riots, and it's unfortunate that the media tries to portray that across all protesters as violent and as threats to the nation's security. Although riots still are ongoing and have raised tensions between the people and the police, much of the actual destruction and looting aren't mainly caused by the protesters themselves, as some during this financial struggle take advantage of the situation to loot goods. Extremist groups may also contribute to the violence seen at these protests, but for the vast majority, these demonstrations remain peaceful. As the progression of these protests continue, people have begun to realize that rioting is highly damaging to the local area, as many of the locals have expressed their anger regarding the destruction of public property and have brought it to the protesters' attention. And at least, as of June 13th, it seems that many are heeding their grievances and riots are on an overall decline. There is a stark difference between rioters/looters and protesters, and the actions of the rioters shouldn't be projected over the vast majority. Another major overgeneralization is the view that all cops are inherently, quote-unquote, bad people. Cops are subjected to this flawed system and culture of policing. The acronym ACAB does not stand for all cops are bad, but rather all cops are bastards. The word bastard in this context refers to the change of something in such a way as to lower its quality or value, which in this case would be the effects of the policing system on soon-to-be, current, and past cops. In Buffalo, a police officer pushed over an elderly protester to the ground, while others walked past as the man bled. Later on, the police unit of 57 members resigned as a result of the treatment of the two members, as they were simply, quote-unquote, executing orders. Were the officers' actions warranted? Absolutely not. But to me, the most critical part of the situation was how they justified their actions, by stating how they were following orders. To me, this demonstrates a major flaw in the policing system. Although I don't know much about police training, the fact that police aren't able to analyze a situation and act accordingly is deeply disturbing. Although the violence used during these protests are unjustifiable and the officers should be punished for their actions, we should keep in mind that the majority of the fault still lies with the system and not with the individual officers. I am not justifying Derek Chauvin's actions, nor the actions of any other officer who has killed innocent lives. Those officers who wrongly commit such acts should be charged for their actions. The connotations of these corrupt police, however, shouldn't be projected onto the police force as a whole. The police as a whole are not the enemy, as they are also subjected to these flawed systems. The other issue is an oversimplification of statistical analysis. Many observers are only looking on the surface and taking that as fact instead of further questioning. For example, when looking at a journal from the Washington Post about fatal shootings in the United States, it's noted that blacks are killed by police more than twice the rate of whites. Some would argue that this rate demonstrates systemic racism. To others, however, they try to look at these statistics from another perspective. They might question what isn't addressed in that rate, and recognize that the rate only addresses the general population and doesn't factor in the incarceration rates. They might reason that during these cop-killing situations, that police aren't facing an average person, but rather facing criminals or suspects. Thus, the incarceration population, rather than the general population, should be used for such data analysis. That is, the incarceration population is a better proxy for individuals encountered by cops during these killing incidents. Using another source, in this case Pew Research Center, 475,900 blacks and 436,500 whites are incarcerated in 2017. By a similar calculation, if the incarceration to killing rate were proportional, it could be as many as 12,340 blacks killed. Based off of this data, it shows that 1,291 instead of the proportional 12,345 blacks are killed. To some, this would demonstrate that the statistics don't support that cops killing is systemic racially based, which may also signify that police brutality is an issue that impacts all people regardless of race, and that is the exact reason why all of us need to be united against police brutality. These opposing perspectives furthermore suggest that even statistical analysis isn't quite set in stone as it appears. It's important to note that people shouldn't take information at face value, especially when partial facts are presented as a whole picture. Questioning and critical thinking are crucial to furthering conversations and preventing misinformation. The third topic I'd like to address is the division in the country and what we should be focusing on to pave way towards a solution. Firstly, the focus of this issue is around the change of a system. The process to change a system is tedious and long, and united efforts from both the higher-ups, the people, and police are necessary to develop this. The grouping of police versus protesters carries the me versus them mindset. It angers me that the actions of President Trump to quote-unquote secure the nation through the use of military forces only enforces this hatred and anger towards the officers and empowers the divide in the country. Echoing the words of General Allen and General Mattis, focusing on the security of the nation over the grievances of the protesters not only demonstrates a lack of care to the unity of the nation, but also, to me, demonstrates the denial of the issues that have incited these protests. Civil leaders of power need to respond to the needs of the citizens, whether that is on a local, state, or federal level, as the first responsibility of the government is to safeguard the lives of its citizens. On a technical aspect, other forms of crowd control need to be implemented, as the current use of supposedly non-lethal weapons has permanently impaired some people and in some cases were fatal. At the very least, officers should be informed and trained on the proper procedures for crowd control, such as using communication firstly and giving warnings before using these weapons as a last resort. On a federal level, changes such as revoking militarized weapons from police custody and actively encouraging local governors to enact changes upon the current policing system and criminal justice system may also ease tensions between the police and the people, as well as prevent further injuries on both sides. On a local level, leaders should refuse the use of militarized weapons such as flashbangs as a means of crowd control and discourage officers from using excessive or unnecessary force. Complete change of the policing and criminal justice system will take a lot longer to reform. However, basic technical changes should be enacted immediately so as to demonstrate that people's voices are heard, and furthermore will prevent the innocent loss of life from both the officers and protesters. From the human perspective, total reform can only be executed with the mutual cooperation of the people, the police, and our civil leaders. In the general public, the tension between the left and right further divides our nation, and in order for reform, people need to be willing to exchange ideas and be open for discussion. Jonathan Haidt reveals the concept of the rider and the elephant, in which the elephant is the more emotional side, while the rider is the rational side. You can't change the elephant as it is a deep subconscious feeling within. and change can only be motivated through other emotional means. So what you can change is the path, or the environmental factors. By altering the path, or in this case, exposing yourself to others' ideas, and thinking either through friends, family, or another news outlet, may alter your elephant, which opens you up for change. With every new perspective gained, introspection may occur more frequently and allows you to solidify your own opinion and pursue for mutual understanding of each other. Tensions between the public and the police may also be resolved through understanding, communication, and support of one another. The duty of the police is to serve and protect the people and maintain peace. In order to do their job effectively, the support of the public is crucial. Again, the police aren't the enemy. And, if anything, we are all in the same boat. The cooperation of the police and the people are necessary for total reform to occur. Clear communication is greatly needed to convey messages to both sides. Again, the idea of the rider and the elephant pops up. You can control the path. Open yourself to others' perspectives and ideas. To the officers, it's clear that with the riot gear and weapons that you are superior in pure strength. However, this does not allow for the abuse of power, as that would go against the very principles of your job, to protect the people. Don't view the protesters as enemies, and instead be attentive during the protests and really internalize their messages of change to these flawed systems. This gives you a chance to think for yourself and question the very system you serve. I'm just doing my job does not justify violent acts against the people. As when harm comes to them, there should be questions about the policing system, about your superior's orders. Those are automatic red flags. I quote General Mattis, "Engage your brain before you engage your weapon." To the protesters, viewing the police as the enemy is not the goal. Again, it's about mutual understanding. The job of the police is to protect the people. Keep in mind their occupation puts their lives at risk for you on a daily basis. Especially during this time of unrest, imagine the hatred they face constantly. I believe that during these tense times, communication becomes critical. You need to reason out your grievances so that they open room for discussion. It's not about placing blame on the police, as they are also victims of these flawed systems. Listen to what the police may be troubled with when handling a crowd, and support them in finding a solution. This is beneficial to the people as a whole, regardless of race, as we all face police brutality. And by supporting the officers, it demonstrates respect and derails from the typical fear associated with them. To both the police and the protesters, the surface issue of police brutality can be resolved with mutual respect and understanding of each other. This is called empathy, something that lacks greatly within both parties. To some, my ideas of resolution may seem idealistic, innocent, and far-fetched, but I believe that a growing number of people are coming to this realization of the importance of unity and empathy. To the officers in Coral Gables, Florida, the Orange County Sheriff John Mina, the Orlando Police Chief Orlando Rolon, the police officer in Houston, Texas, who comforted a young girl who asked, "Are you going to shoot us?" To all the police who have taken a knee in solidarity and understanding, and to all the police who walked alongside the demonstrators, thank you. Thank you for allowing yourself to see the protesters' perspective and serving your community. Furthermore, to the protesters who voice themselves on social media, who voice themselves through peaceful demonstrations, who've had these difficult conversations with loved ones and with officers, and to those who've knelt and walked alongside the police, thank you. Thank you for peacefully and effectively communicating your messages and allowing yourself to understand the perspective of the officers. We are all heading towards a common goal. Let's not cherry-pick partial facts to suit our own biased narrative. We need to see the whole picture and approach these issues in unity. The American motto is, "In union there is strength," and this message must continue to resonate even during these troubling times.